Welcome. This is the Ag Engineering Podcast, where we talk tools, tips, and techniques to improve the sustainability of your farm. I am your host, Andy Chamberlain from the University of Vermont Extension, and this podcast is supported by Northeast SARE, providing grants and education to advance innovation in sustainable agriculture. We're trying to improve the industry by chatting with farmers and getting their input on tools, tips, or techniques that have changed the way they farm for good. Many of these practices affect multiple areas of the farm. Whether it be environmentally, emotionally, physically, or financially, we share the knowledge to promote sustainable agriculture, lifestyle, and business. Thanks for having a listen. Now, let's get started. Today's episode comes to you from Barnet, Vermont, where we meet with Heidi Choate and Evan Perkins of Small Axe Farm. Together, they've got 20 years agricultural experience and 11 years in this business. They are growing on an acre of production, which includes about an eighth of an acre in both high tunnels and caterpillar tunnels. They sell primarily to retail wholesale markets, with 10% going to CSA or custom orders. Their sales this last year was about $115,000 gross, and they utilize about 2.5 FTEs. Heidi and Evan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks.
So I just set the stage a little bit about your farm, but if you could just describe what you do in one sentence, what would you say?
We have a 1 acre no-till market garden on our off-grid homestead, and that's how we make our living.
So some of the previous episodes we've discussed include farming on a hillside, no-till production. We've covered the paper pot transplanter. And today we're telling a few stories from Small Axe Farm. So it's a little bit different of a conversation. And if you haven't listened to the other ones with this farm, I recommend you check them out first. But today we're going to talk about some more fun questions. So could you guys tell me about a time when you felt really successful farming?
It was probably from year one when we were filling like 2 CSA boxes for our neighbors. Mm-hmm. Like, that was awesome.
Yeah, I think we're always feeling pretty successful around here because there's a lot of food that leaves the farm. And I mean, obviously farmers make mistakes and we have tons to learn, but when you get more efficient every year and you put out more food every year and you get better at working together every year, it's, you feel successful.
I mean, you said you've had like 20% growth every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, 15 to 20%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's steady.
It's steady.
Yeah, and I think it seems to be for us a good amount to be able to keep on top of things, which we do not always keep on top of things, but to keep it manageable and realistic, and not to put too much pressure on the local market by trying to expand too much. Just figuring out where is there actually a place for this food to go. So I think we've noticed kind of farms, sometimes start up around here, have big growth plans, and then it doesn't work out for the other local farmers, who then all of a sudden have 100 CSA shares introduced into the market, or for the farms that grow so fast that they then shut down after a few years. So we like slow, steady growth. But we started with very little debt because we built our own house and that kind of stuff. So that was a luxury we provided for ourselves through hard work of living in a tiny cabin, and so we didn't have debt for the house, so we didn't have to grow as fast.
Now you've had this business going for 10 years now, and your most successful time was year one. You still enjoying it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think we feel that same feeling like every year. I guess that's what I was trying to say with that, is just like that feeling is something we feel every year when we feel like, oh, like that that store is really psyched with what we're providing, and they're letting us know, and then we're getting all these feedback from customers at that store where we've never sold before. And so, yeah, that's great. I mean, we like being productive members of our community. And so like, it felt really good to provide 2 of our neighbors with CSA shares that first year. And it's the same feeling when we're providing, hundreds or thousands of people with salad greens now.
Great. So on the contrary, tell me a time when you felt really challenged farming.
I think maybe when we were doing a similar amount food, but less efficiently. I think we have really figured out a lot of great systems that, have helped our bodies and our spirits. And yeah, there were times where it was just a lot of physical work. And there were successes within that, but now that we're becoming so much more efficient, it's really pleasurable to have and to look back and say, wow, we did this nice and slow, but we kind of got here and had our learning curve, and it's great to be in that place now.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think there are definitely some years, especially trying to scale no-till growing when we didn't have any information from anywhere on it. It took us a while to figure out how to, take that labor down to a really manageable level, which it is now, to flip beds, to do all those things that are a little easier if you're tilling and have that machinery. We've had a lot of hard times, as farmers and as a family, just our lifestyle has always been really intense. We just lived on a really low income with no running water and no electricity originally. And then when we first started farming, we just had a really small solar power system and not very many tools. And so we would just get in over our heads, and we do that less, but it still happens sometimes. The struggle with that has been real, and has been often, that we've had those moments, but, I think that it's definitely less and less. And we are, when we decided to make money on the farm, part of it was to offset disasters, to have the money to replace the greenhouse plastic when it blows off in the middle of winter, to be able to hire enough employees in April so that you're not broken before you start your farming season, because you're working 14 hours a day every day. And so that has been, because of all those struggles, that's kind of our direction now, is trying to mitigate, and plan ahead for disasters and not have them happen to us, but they still do.
And to have, time for your sanity and time to get out in the outdoors for us is super important, and to have days off. And, it's really easy to just not take a day off. And so that's something we've really worked hard at, to be able to, take our son mountain biking and leave maybe at 4:00 and, on an afternoon, and feel like things are okay. Things are going to be all right if we leave at 4.
And I think part of one time, other times we feel successful is we've always taken long trips, even during the growing season. And except for the last couple of years, we've gone on a long paddling trip every summer, usually after everything's planted, end of June, early July. I've done a lot of amazing traveling, mostly low budget traveling, because we're wilderness people, and that's where we want to be when we're not on the farm. So, that for us is how we know we're successful. So even though our farm has been more successful the last couple of years, as we've really tried to turn the corner on some infrastructure projects, we've had a little less time for longer trips. So we're hoping that that's going to turn around, and the plan is for this summer to turn that around and have more time. But we haven't been for a long time farmers who work 14 hours a day every day. We take time off to go and do stuff, and we always have. And there's been little spells here and there where we've been like that, but we lead a fairly balanced life, especially if you consider the time in the winter that we have.
It's really important that you value that time off and take the time, even in the busy season, for your mental health and sanity. We've talked about a lot of topics in previous episodes, and even this one already, just about the little things that you do to make your life significantly better on the day-to-day. What are just some of the key big picture bullet items that you think have been some of the major contributing factors to sustainable farming and farming for the long haul and keeping your mental health in check?
Well, for me, it's just been a really competent partner, so that we can divide labor, and that we both don't always have to be thinking about everything. That gives us the space to not go crazy. We still go crazy sometimes, but that has been really important, that we've always from the very beginning been able to, like, okay, you do this, I do that, and then we can fight over where they overlap, but not over everything.
Some autonomy there is great. And we really do play to our strengths, which are very different, which helps. And it's helped us make a great business, because we have pretty different skill sets. And like you said, they do overlap, but we really help each other in a lot of ways, which is great.
Funnily enough, it's that we feel like our farm is at least moving towards and a part of a model of environmental sustainability. We started homesteading because we wanted to be able to sleep at night. We really, we feel our culture's in a bit of a crisis, and in terms of climate change and how we're dealing with it, and that's just an important thing for us. And so living a life where we feel like we're making chipping away a little dent is really important, and it's really informed how we use our land. It's why we farm, even though we own larger acreage, why we only farm a small part of it. So I think for us, that is a key to success, is doing something that we really believe in. So on those hard days, it's easy to keep going, because it's like, oh yeah, there's no question for me whether what I'm doing here is right. It may not be the best way to do it, but it's moving in the direction that we want to go.
Mid-season, when you're feeling burnt out and like you really need to go take a bike ride, but there's still crops that need to be picked in markets that need produce brought to, what's the key to taking time off mid-season? Is that a good employee, or do you have other tricks? Do you just plan to not have anything to harvest for a week, or?
I think the more organized that we get, and the more systems we have in place, mid-season, our employees usually are cranking right along by then, and we can leave them with things, and we are kind of moving as a team really well. And like Evan was saying before, when it's time to do deliveries, we're throwing the bikes in, we're squeezing those bikes in, and that's one way where we feel like we'll show up to bike ride at 6 p.m., but we can sneak out a couple hours before it's dark, and so it's those kind of things that we're doing, is staying super organized, being really efficient during the day, and making sure our employees are efficient so that we can squeeze out that time and make it happen.
Yeah, I think that for me, and I think we're with our employees as well, we try to be flexible. So if they have something they really want to do, or they have a window to do an outdoor activity they really like, that we create the space for that. But we'll do a lot of days where we'll cut out at 3 and it's light till 8, so we can go and get a couple hour mountain bike ride in, and then have a beer afterwards, and that's amazing. Like, to be able to do that in the middle of the week, and then that's enough to kind of
mentally it's
to break the craziness.
Yeah, but life outside of the farm is great. Yeah,
having a beer after riding your bike for 2 hours is a pretty good moment.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
It's probably a lot of it is just the fact that you're getting outdoor. I mean, aside from farming, outdoor physical activity. I mean, you're going for a bike ride. Like, that is going to clear your head, and it's a couple-hour break midweek that just helps you reset and relax a little bit.
Absolutely. And then we'll do that on the weekend as well. So yeah, it does. Sometimes you think, how could I have worked all day long and now I'm going to go get some physical exercise? But it does, like you said, it really does clear your head. It's great.
And we both came into this with bodies, even before we started farming, that I've had a back problem since my late 20s and have had several ruptured discs. And Heidi's got some problems with her joints too. And so we've dealt with injuries all along, but being active, being physically, athletically active is, kept us going, even though we have, I've got a fairly significant degenerative condition in my back, but, and there've definitely been lots of hard times with that, but the athletic exercise is really important, because farming is about, it's these, repetitive motions that are often tense and using your body in one way. And so, Lots of different farmers have different strategies, whether they're doing yoga or they're working out at a gym or they're going out. But I think if you're going to do it for the long haul, you need to have something like that.
I really like how you phrase that athletic level of exercise. I mean, you got to be an athlete, and then at that point, you're strong enough to do the day work. I mean, it's tiring, but you're not wearing down your body so much.
Yeah.
And we're much more upright than we used to be as well, which is great. Just with all the tools and the changes, we're doing things smarter, obviously, through the years, and that's been really helpful.
Yeah, our whole farm is geared, like with my back problem, and from early on, it was like, okay, how do we make this activity upright? Whatever it is, can it be done upright? And so that works out really well for our employees because most of the work our employees do is upright.
Yeah.
They're not, but there's some that isn't, but we try to keep our system such that any work that doesn't have to be done upright is shorter.
It's fast.
Yeah.
Like with the greens harvester, it's fast.
Yeah. We're just teaching them how to harvest faster so they can be down in that position lower.
Before we started recording, you mentioned how you didn't even have internet on the farm until 4 or 5 years ago. How did you learn from others, and how have you learned from podcasts?
It's a pretty new revelation, I feel like, for us. I mean, if we were out here on our own for a really long time, just figuring it out, reading books and...
Yeah, we had a couple of Elliot Coleman's books, and then we had Ed Smith's Vegetable Gardener's Bible, which is the book we learned the most from. And then we were friends with farmers, and so we could ask questions. But our situation was so unique, farming on a hillside and with the no-till, we didn't really know too many people to ask questions to about a lot of the stuff we had questions about. So, but like every, farmer and homesteader, we just slowly solved problems. And by the time we did get internet and started to be able to see YouTube videos and stuff,
that was funny.
We found that we were part of this trend of no-till farmers. And
like, we've been doing this for years. Hey, we do that. Everything was...
In all the advancements in market farming, like we had figured them out kind of autonomously without knowing them. We'd been using silage tarps for 15 years. We'd figured out really efficient no-till bed flips, and we didn't even know what no-till bed flip was. We're just like, how do we get this crop out of here and get another one in? So I think that was good, but and I think it just proves the point that you give like a human a tool, and then eventually you can give them, they're all going to come to similar uses of it. It's just someone's going to write a book about it first. But a lot of this stuff just develops. I think for us, I think for a lot of farmers, like there hasn't been a lot new under the sun since, Elliot Coleman kind of like spread a lot of really great information around of stuff that he developed and he had learned with his initial books. And that's still what the market farming movement is mostly based on, is a lot of his work. And then people have just been adapting it. And so because we were working from that same root source of material that a lot of market farmers were working from, we came up with a lot of the same solutions.
Yep.
What are you doing when you listen to podcasts? You're a pretty big podcast listener.
You mean, what are we doing? What else are we doing?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, let's see. I definitely will listen to them sometimes up in the field. I don't use headphones up there as much as I used to, but sometimes I'll listen to them like if I'm doing something where I can focus and it's quiet. So sometimes when I'm up there planting, I'll listen to podcasts, or when I'm seeding or working with microgreens in the wintertime. It makes washing microgreens trays really pleasurable.
Yeah, bagging greens for sure. That's great. You got a couple hours there.
Yeah, we spend a lot of our life bagging greens. Yeah. We don't listen to them as much during the farm day in the summertime. It's more like the off times.
Evenings, before bed.
Car rides.
Car rides are good.
Yeah. It's kind of like when we want to spend time together, like on a car ride, or like we're both really interested in that topic. So like a farming podcast is great because that will spark conversations as we go.
We'll just pause it and discuss.
Yeah. And if we're like ready just to chill downtime, we won't listen to a farming podcast because we'll end up talking. If we're not in the mood, we'll do something else. Yep.
what are you most excited about in the next year of your farming life?
I definitely have a few things on my plate that I'm excited about. Just learning QuickBooks, so I'm just excited. I'm hopeful of where that can take the farm. Just as far as organization, I've done everything by hand in the past, and doing farmers web software. So I'm excited to try that. And we are creating our first real serious round of SOPs, and so excited to get a little bit more efficient and organized around employees for next year, and sort of spending some time this winter while I've got downtime to really get organized and be ready for our spring employee training.
Nice.
So I'm excited about that.
And this coming year will be the first summer that our wash pack building won't be finished, but that's been a many-year project, and we had a fire in between that started us at zero again last year. But we having a fully functioning wash pack space where everything is happening, and having a walk-in cooler we can at least run part of the time, just everything together, because right now, like, our processing happens at different places. We're walking stuff back and forth to the root cellar. It's not where there's a lot of time wasted, and it also it makes training the employees harder to be in separate places doing things. So we're looking forward to being the beginning of the season, having more side work, working with employees to get them up to speed quicker. So one of the many advantages of having that wash pack space, enough space to do everything in one spot. Right now, we wash our stuff on the side of a shed, behind the house, wherever there's shade.
And there's summer kitchen,
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah. And they're just everything's happening in different places, just because we don't have one big piece of infrastructure that can cover it all. So that'll be great.
And to get everything on wheels, I think will be good for everybody's bodies as well. When there's just so much produce, just to not be hauling it everywhere will be great, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, that's really the last couple of years started to crop up as we, just like we're producing so much food now that it's just, when you were carrying 5 cases of greens, that was one thing, but when you're carrying 15, it starts to add up, back and forth. So,
like you said earlier, your farming is really material handling.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
What other ideas or topics would you benefit to know from other farmers about?
Well, I think it would be super helpful to hear from lots of different kinds of farms about their experiences with lots of different farm software. I think we just need more information for all the different scales of farming, for which software works for which scale well, because I think that's a pretty important tool for farms. It's something we're really interested in to help us kind of streamline things, and to so I think that's something that I'm really interested in hearing from.
Software generally?
Yes, like kind of like things like Harvey, Farmers Web, Local Line, those types of software where customers can order online. And you
customer
management, allowing customers to customize CSA boxes,
Pay online.
Yeah. And they all have, the different softwares have different ways that you pay for them. And, some of which work great for some farms, but not for others because of how much you use it. And we have a lot of different market streams, and we would love to have a software that worked for all of them flawlessly, so that we could do our big wholesale accounts, but we weren't paying a percentage price on that because it doesn't make any sense for the amount of work it would take us to do it separately, as well as, 30 small customers who are ordering $15 a week.
I'd also be curious to hear from other farmers. It's been great that you ask people what their gross revenue is, because we don't hear that a lot on other podcasts. And it was something that was like, that would be super valuable to give this some context for how successful they are. But also just curious, would love to hear how much people are spending on employees or infrastructure and that kind of thing. Maybe breaking those numbers down a bit, just to give it context. And
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. And that was one thing I really wanted to share on this podcast was even just the rough gross number. There's a lot of ways and a lot of things that can come out of that, but I think it helps just kind of set the stage as a farmer listener. How big are they, and what kind of numbers are they pushing? Because I think that kind of helps set the stage some. And so thanks for sharing your numbers as well. And that's great feedback, and I'll try to keep that going.
Great.
Yeah, and I think kind of, what's really helpful to keep things realistic for people is gross revenue related to what kind of market you have.
Absolutely.
So our gross revenue is primarily wholesale to, direct to retail wholesale. But we could be selling the exact amount of stuff to a great farmer's market in Westchester County and making easily double.
Right.
But we're in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. And so just to help people put it into perspective, but also we don't have to pay the taxes down there, and we don't, we're really happy with what we make up here. But just, it's important for farmers to have context, because one downside of having access to all this information in YouTube and podcasts and is, people feeling like they're not successful when actually they are. Like, you're making $500 a week at the farmer's market. If that's the money you need, then you're successful and you feel like you've got a good life. So just, numbers sometimes help with that, and context for those numbers. It'd be great to hear from some of those farms who were where we were 6 years ago, making $25,000 a year and pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Context is key, because there's a lot of people growing an acre or two market garden. Yeah. Not a lot of people are growing on a hill. A lot of people are growing on a hill. So it's like trying to blend all that together. You really need to see a good size amount of picture in order to put it all into context, to understand why the paper pot works for you and this cedar works for you versus it might not work for somebody else, even of similar size.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing all that today. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
If people want to reach out with questions or follow along with what you're doing, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, we have an Instagram page, Small Axe Farm.
And we have a Facebook page, and we have a website, which is just smallxfarm.com.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for being on the show, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you learned something today or plan to make a change on your farm, let me know. I'd love to receive any feedback you have. Just click the link in the description to submit the form. It will help the future of this podcast to be a resource that is helpful for you. And while you're at it, I hope you go ahead and subscribe, share this with a friend, or leave a comment. And if you want more information, check out the show notes on our website at agengpodcast.com. That's agengpodcast.com. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a great day.
The proceeding has been a production of University of Vermont Extension. For more information on Extension, log on to www.uvm.edu/extension.